It's time for the Phil Ferguson Show.
This is Phil Ferguson, and you are listening to The Phil Ferguson Show. It is 2024, and this is show number 479. If I've not messed up the numbering somehow, but I think it's 479. We have a lot today. Quick summary of what we're going to talk about. A thing called a 72T. And the 72T is a way to take money out of your IRA before the age of 59 and a half and not pay a penalty. I also have a discussion on taking money out of a Roth account, and that also is before 59 and a half, and how you can do that versus using the SEPP, which is the 72T I just mentioned. Also a quick, fun little diversion discussion on my new pool equipment and how that's going, and an update on pool temperature. Just a few minutes on that. And then 2023 investing year in review. What different things returned what different amounts, and we're going to have fun with that. And of course, the next episode, not this one, so you're going to have to wait, but the next episode is the 18-year performance numbers. If you've been listening to the show, you know about 8 years ago, the first time I did a 10-year review on a couple of different ways one might invest. And I've updated that for another year, now the 18-year review. So, but that will be, I think, in the next show. So hang on for that. And before we get into all those things I mentioned, I'm going to talk about really quickly, again, and it's a thing I'm fascinated with, electric cars. If you'll forgive me for a moment. I was at a meeting with some people, and somehow we got on the conversation of electric cars. And a person said something like, I would not get an electric car because there's so many problems with them. And I said, oh, what are the problems? And they're like, oh, I don't want to have a debate about this. And I said, neither do I. I don't want to have a debate about it. I just want to know what those problems are, because I'm not aware of problems that would prevent you from buying an electric car. And they said, well, there's nowhere to charge. And I said, excellent. Locations can be limited in your area, but here in Orlando, and I pull up an application on my phone, which anyone can install even if you don't have an electric car, called PlugShare. And you can look at all of the charging locations. And so I showed, it happens to be her, so I'm just going to not fight it and say her, but I showed her all the locations in and around the Orlando area. And she says, well, that's great, but I don't need to charge around here. It's on long trips. And then I was a little snarky. I said, oh, look, if you zoom out, you can see all the locations between here and Key West, to the Atlantic Ocean, to the Gulf Coast, up through northern Florida, up to Atlanta. There are probably really good charging locations now about every 30 miles. It is not as convenient as gasoline yet, but it's getting pretty freaking close. And once 12,000 more Tesla version 3 supercharging towers become available to drivers like me, the number of locations I can charge doubles. Now, that's pretty cool. And they're like, well, that's fine, but the batteries are expensive to replace. Yeah, if you had to replace your battery, but I think most manufacturers, it's 8 years and 100,000 miles, which might even be mandated by law. And if the battery was so expensive that you had to spend more than the car was originally worth, because that's been going around, then you just buy a new car. How many times do you keep cars more than 10 years? And they're like, well, we don't. Okay. Do you have a place that you could charge at home? Yeah. Well, if you can charge at home, well, then the cost of electricity can be 1/3 to 1/4 the cost of getting gasoline. And she says, well, electric cars catch on fire. And I said, they can, and they do, and they have, and they're very hard to put out. No doubt about it. That's a problem. But you know what? Gasoline cars catch on fire. Not as much, she says. And I said, well, actually, the last data I looked at, and I would have to go look on the Google again to double check, but gasoline-powered cars are 3 times more likely to catch fire. Easier fires to put out. Not easy, easier. But gasoline cars catch on fire. Electric cars catch on fire. Okay, what else you got? And she's like, well, I don't want to talk about this anymore. And I said, we don't have to talk about it at all. You said there were problems. I asked you what the problems were. You told me a couple. I'm good if we talk about something else. And so we did. But it was a fascinating thing that this misinformation, and one of the things I like to take it to the next level, and I didn't get to in this situation, is why do you think these things are really big problems? I mean, if you knew nothing about electric cars and just go, I don't know anything about electric cars. Cool. If you don't know anything, you don't know anything. But how is it you have information that's false? How do you have information that is contrary to reality? Where are you getting this information? I know where they're getting the information, by the way, and so do you. I'm sure most of you do. But why is that? Why are you being told there's nowhere to charge? Why are you being told that they catch on fire all the time? Why are you being told it costs more to replace the battery than the entire car? What's driving this? Just I don't know that you need to have the answer. I don't know that I actually have the answer, but it's another level of thinking about, well, where are you getting your information from, and why are you getting that information? Who is promoting that information, and why are they promoting that information? Especially if that information is false. And of course, it takes me to the idea that I've talked about before. We must always doubt ourselves a little bit, at least, and double check. And I do that from time to time, and I go, I know this to be true, but I just want to go check because I haven't looked at that for a while. And I find out that I'm wrong, and I make corrections on this show, which thankfully no one's been really butthurt about lately. But in the past, I've had people complain that I make too many corrections. Whatever. I want to be as accurate and as true as possible. I want to believe more true things and less false things. And it's a journey because it's a complicated fucking world out there. Anyway, that's it for now. Take a quick break and go into other segments of the show.
Jesus had a tough life, boy. I read about that guy. Jesus is the only guy that ever came back from the dead that didn't scare the fuck out of everybody, man. He's the only guy that ever crawled out of a grave where people didn't go, oh, I just saw some fucker crawl out of this grave. Jesus comes back. He doesn't get any pressure. No static. Nobody's upset. He climbs out. He's walking around. Nobody's upset. They can eat with him and everything, you know. It's like, isn't that guy dead? Yeah, but he's real stubborn, man. He won't accept it. Pass the butter. What are they staring at? Yeah, I read it, folks. I read that book. He's on the cross. 30, 40 Christians standing around going, it's a shame that he has to die. And Jesus is going, well, maybe I wouldn't have to. Somebody get a ladder and a pair of pliers. I don't know if Jesus has actually spoken in an audible voice to anybody in about 2,000 years, folks. I think his last words may have been, ow, ow! church. It may have been his last words. I'm not sure. Yeah, people say, you think Jesus is coming back? Sure. What's it been? 2,000 years? Boy, I sure don't want to dampen anybody's optimism here. It's only 2,000 fucking years. Yeah, he's coming back. He's going to do game shows. We're going to go, Jesus, this is your life. Remember this noise? Yeah. All right, don't tell me. Don't tell me. Give me a second. He's up in heaven right now. They're going, why don't you go back down to earth? Be a symbol of peace and love to the world. Help. And he's going, yeah, sure. Help, huh? Yeah, I'd like to help. Tell him I'll be there as soon as I can play the piano again. Thanks a lot. Like being the only savior that can use his hand as a fucking whistle.
The Phil Ferguson Show is for educational and entertainment purposes only. Nothing said on the show should be interpreted as personalized investment advice. Investments should be based on your personal situation, and you, of course, should consult with your financial advisor or tax professional before taking any actions. This Investing Skeptically segment is on a thing called the 72T. Another variant of this, by the way, is the 72Q. Not to do with QAnon, it's just 72Q. And basically, the 72T is a way for you to take money out of your IRA or like kind of program, 401k, 403b, multiple other types of qualified tax favorable account types. Wow, so many words. But the 72T, let's just keep it simple for now. If you are in the situation where you want to retire before the age of 59 and a half, and it so happens that the vast majority of your portfolio is in an IRA, if you take money out before 59 and a half and don't qualify for one of the exemptions to the 10% penalty, you will pay a 10% penalty. Let's say you have $1 million. You take out $50,000 or 5%, you're going to owe 10% penalty on the $50,000 or $5,000 tax. So that is designed to discourage you from taking your money out too early. But with the 72T program, or regulations or rules from the government and the IRS, you can start taking out money early without the 10% penalty. Now, you will still have to pay taxes on the money you take out based on your personal tax situation. And you would want to check. And with anything to do with the 72T or the 72Q, which is mostly for annuities, and I'm not going to go into detail on, but if you want to do either one of those, I insist, and this is the same thing for whether you're a client or not a client, I insist that you confer with your tax professional. If you do it wrong, you could owe all of the 10% penalty for all of the money you've taken out, plus penalties for not paying the penalties fast enough. So be advised, this is high-level stuff that you should not do without professional consultation of a tax expert or an enrolled agent. So please keep that in mind. But again, if your situation is you are not 59 and a half, there is a way to get money out of your IRA without paying the 10% penalty. It is often referred to as the 72T. It is also referred to as an SEPP, substantially equivalent periodic payments, or substantially equal periodic payments, not to be confused with a SEP, S-E-P, only one P, IRA, SEP IRA, self-employed IRA. This is a totally different thing. It has to do, well, they both have to do with taxes. This is a rule for withdrawing before the age of 59 and a half and not paying the 10% penalty. Again, SEPP, substantially equal or equivalent periodic payments. Now, if that wasn't enough fuckery of how that works, the next thing you need to know is that there's 3 different ways that you can calculate this. It's interesting. I've talked about this on the show, but it's probably been a long time. I was just recently talking to a client, and he will know who he is, that reminded me, basically, I thought of myself, I haven't looked at the details of this for a while because I tell people to talk to their tax professional. But I am going to give you the next level of deepness with this. There's 3 different ways you can calculate taking out the money. Before I get into that, I also have to mention you must do this for 5 years, at least 5 years. And you have to do it for 5 years or until you turn 59 and a half, whichever comes later. So if you start at 57, you have to do 57, 58, 59, 60, and 61. And then 62, you can change it, do something else. So keep in mind, if you just need something came up and you just need 30 grand out, then this is not the way to do it. Unless you want to dodge the penalty. You're still going to pay the tax, by the way. If you want to dodge the penalty and take out money every year for the next 5 years, even though you only need the money one time, you could do that, but then you're removing money from the tax sheltered account, or in this case, IRA. So the 3 methods. And if you want to read up on this, Investopedia, absolutely delightful website. You can go learn more about this. There are 3 different methods. The first is the fixed amortization method. And this involves life expectancy tables. And it is calculated every year. And the amount that you may take out may change. And again, you have to use the right table. You have to use the right calculation and the right mathematics. All of this you can theoretically do on your own. But I would hire a tax professional, as said earlier. There's also the fixed annuitization method. So it's just a different way to calculate it. All 3 of these, by the way, the results come up about the same, but I think it is the annuitization method is the one that will give you a constant number that you'll have to take out for the 5 years. And then there's also the required minimum distribution method, which will change year to year and may go up or down. And that's based on the value of your portfolio from 12/31 of the preceding year and your age for this calendar year when your tax professional calculates the amount that you want to take out. There's guardrails on this on how much you can take out, but be careful that if for some reason you end up taking out too much money and you drain the IRA, which is unlikely given the guardrails, but if you have a full stock portfolio and the market goes down 40, 50, 60% and you keep taking the money out that's required, you could have a serious problem. The problem that you could have is that if you do not have enough money to take out for the 5th year or you're 59 and a half, whichever is later. So if you start at 50, you're going to have to do this for 9.5 years. If you don't have enough money to take out, the whole thing could collapse and you could owe the 10% penalty plus penalties on the penalties for the last 9 years. And of course, since you just drained your IRA, you probably don't have that money. Also, in general, any money out of an IRA should not be used to pay your way out of significant debt. This is my opinion. You may want to consult an attorney as well as a tax professional on this little tidbit. But if you owe a lot of money and you can't pay your fucking bills and you're thinking about what do I want to do, bankruptcy or pull all the money out of my IRA, you want to do the bankruptcy. Well, again, talk to an attorney, a bankruptcy professional. The money in your IRA is protected from bankruptcy. That's one of the beautiful things about IRAs, Roth IRAs, 401k, 403b, and many other accounts. They're protected from bankruptcy and from debt collectors of any kind. But you could take the money out and pay your bills. Or you could pay bankruptcy, go through the hassle. Which decision is right for you? Check into it. But anyway, the 72T is a way for you to take out money prior to retirement. I would really recommend against doing this if you're 50 or younger, just because you're going to have to take out money for so many years that you start to get a slightly higher probability that it gets fucked up somehow. So we don't really want to be in that situation. This is more for mid 50s, maybe even late 50s. You just don't want to wait till 59 and a half. And this is also for someone who has the vast majority or all of their money somehow ended up, and they were lucky to do so, get it into IRAs. You can take it out without paying the penalty. If you have specific questions about this, you can email me, phil@polarisfinancialplanning.com. But do keep in mind, even if I respond to you, which is likely, it is not specific and it is not personalized investment advice. So I can give you ideas, suggestions, send you to Investopedia like I did already, and you can learn more. But for anything to do with this stuff, you must at minimum talk to your tax professional. If you are doing it yourself, I will recommend against you doing so. So you could still do it. Nothing wrong with, nothing illegal about it, but I don't want you to make a mistake and owe a lot of tax money. So that wraps up some information on a 72T.
A lot of people come up here and they thank Jesus for this award. I want you to know that no one had less to do with this award than Jesus. He didn't help me a bit. If it was up to him, Caesar Milan would be up here with that damn dog. So all I can say is, suck it, Jesus. This award is my God now.
You're listening to The Phil Ferguson Show.
This is a little side story, side adventure, normal from the show. It's about my pool water, pool temperature, pumps, equipment, stuff like that. I'm just fascinated by it because prior to moving to Florida, I knew nothing about pools. I still don't know a whole lot, but I know a lot more than I used to. One neat thing is when we bought the house, the previous owners were wonderful, but there were a lot of things that they just did not follow up on or maintain, let's just say, because it was a brand new house. And so they had this mentality that there's nothing to fix or to look at. The original pool pump, which has now been replaced, part of the story, but the original pool pump, when we bought the house, was set to run at 100% maximum capacity for 12 hours a day. And you could go outside and you could hear that thing. It's pretty darn loud, even around the corner of the house. It wasn't horrible, but definitely noticeably loud. And as I learned more about pool pumps, and it's kind of like with the cars, the faster the car goes, the more air resistance you have, your fuel economy starts to fall. Same concept with the pool pump. The faster that pump spins and the more water it pushes, the more electricity it uses, and it's not a linear thing. It's an exponential thing. So spinning twice as fast is roughly something like 4 times the energy. So running a pool pump as short of a period of the day as possible for as high a speed as possible, it is very inefficient. And so this heat pump, or this pool pump, the one that pushes the water, not heating it, but just moving it around, it was using something like 1900 kilowatt as a rate of flow of energy. That's a lot. That's a lot. And what that means is if it ran for 1 hour, 1900 kilowatt for an hour is 1,900 kilowatt, or it's 1,900 watt hours. It's 1.9 kilowatts. So that's the amount of electricity to run a 100-watt bulb. Well, 19 100-watt bulbs for an hour. That's a generously large amount of electricity. And that's for 1 hour, and it was running for 12. So if my utility rate is, let's just say 20 cents to make the math easy, per kilowatt hour, if I'm using almost 2 kilowatt hour per each hour, yeah, that'd be about 40 cents times 12 hours, $4.80 to run the pool pump every day. So call that 30 days in a month, $150. Yeah, $150 a month just to push the water around. Okay. Well, you might think, well, that's the cost of owning a pool. And I didn't know about these little things when we bought the house. I then turned down the pool pump by 20%, which resulted in a savings of about 34% of electricity because it becomes, 36% of electricity because at 0.8% speed times 0.8, it's 0.64. Anyway, it was a big savings of a third, and that was fantastic. Later, and I know I've covered some of this already in past episodes, I had the owner of the local pool repair cleaning / company come to my house. Great guy. And we figured out how to lower the speed of the pump even more, but we couldn't lower it too low because it still had to have enough force to push water up on the roof when the system said, hey, the roof is now warmer than the pool water, and it would push water up to the roof. But we lowered it even more and saved even more money on my average monthly electric bill. Recently, I finally broke down because the old pump, which was nearing end of life, had started to corrode inside because of a leak that was not fixed by the previous owners, or quite frankly, by me in the last year and a half. But it finally got to the point, and I even thought about getting a fixed speed pump. The old one was variable speed, which is why we were able to adjust it, but saving some money up front and just getting a fixed speed pump. Now, thankfully, the owner of the pool installation company, cleaning company, talked me out of it. And the new pump not only is variable speed and you can set it to whatever speed you want, but it hooks up to your Wi-Fi and you get an app. Everything has a fucking app, doesn't it? You get an app on your phone, and with the flip of a switch, the pushing of a spot on the screen of your phone, you can switch this pump. Instead of it running on a certain amount of speed, it runs on a certain amount of water flowing through the system. So you figure out how much flow you need in a day. Generally speaking, the wisdom is that you want to turn over the water in your pool twice every day, and you can keep lowering down that speed till you get to the amount of flow that you want. And that amount of flow is low enough for the little heat pump that I had put in, $2,400 little heat pump, but not a $6,000 heat pump. And at that lower speed, at that lower rate of flow, the pool pump now, instead of being on 12 hours, pretty much needs to be on 24 hours a day. But it's whisper quiet. And during normal operations, even using the heat pump, but not pushing the water up onto the roof, it now uses about 150, maybe even 130, but around that ballpark, watts. So in an hour, it uses 0.15 kilowatt. And if you may recall from a few minutes ago, the other one was using 2 kilowatt as a rate of flow, roughly. And so this is less than 10%, 7%, give or take, 7.5%, 8% at the most of what I was using before for electricity. And because this pool pump and the software sets it at a certain rate of flow, when the valve opens to push water up to the roof, the old pump, which you could only set the speed, this one I set the rate of flow. So when that rooftop opens up, for a brief moment, the pool pump now has to push water up on the roof, and there's open space for the water to go on the roof if it's partially drained over the last 24 hours. And so the pool pump notices that there's not much pressure pushing back, and so it spins up, and now it'll use 3 or 4 or 500 watts to get that up and going. But then once that's up there, it'll calm down and slowly lower its speed until it equalizes, and the rate of flow, at least what I have it set for, is like 23, 25 gallons per minute. And so it will do what it needs to do to increase the kick for the water to go up on the roof. And then it slows back down, not quite as low as not using the roof. So I'm using a teeny bit more electricity when the rooftop is on, because you have to pump the water against gravity up onto the roof. But probably all in all, with this new water pump and how clever it is, I am going to use about 10% of the electricity I used to use. So instead of every month paying $150 in electricity just to move the water around, it's going to be $15. A savings of $135 a month. So over 12 months, I'm almost save enough. Now, maybe 2 years, I'll save enough easily to pay for the pump. And if it lasts 6, 8, 10 years, it's a newer pump, it's a better pump, it's a more efficient pump. Odds are, since it's running at an average lower speed, it's going to last a longer time. Absolute brilliant upgrade from my perspective that pays for itself easily within 2 years. And after that, it's just savings. And of course, it's quieter, it's adjustable, it's magic. So that's all cool. The next thing is the heat pump part. Now, previously I had bought a small little portable heat pump that can plug into a wall outlet. And my calculation was that it might be able to add 1 degree a day. And even that was suspect. Maybe it's half a degree per day. The new one is roughly 50,000 BTUs, British thermal units, which should theoretically, in 12 hours, be able to raise my pool temperature by 4. The problem, of course, the warmer the pool is, the higher the evaporation is. And we've had some cold days where it got close to 40. So even if you're heating the pool, you're losing heat. So it doesn't just magically go up 4 degrees. It goes up 4 degrees, or 4 degrees of energy gets added to the water, but it's cold outside, so the water's evaporating. So it's this battle. But after just a couple of days, 4 to 5 days, my pool went from 78 to 79 degrees to 90 degrees. It's a combination of some rooftop solar water heating and the heat pump and my maniacally clever creation of putting 2 pool covers on the pool. Just like when you're in bed, if you have a blanket on and you're still cold, you put on a second blanket because you're losing too much heat. When you put on the second blanket, your body's generating enough heat and it stays close to you because that's what blankets do. You stay warmer overnight when you're sleeping. Same thing with the pool. So when I want to go swim, sure, it takes a few minutes to take off both covers. I can go in and do my laps in a 90-degree pool, or probably higher if I wanted to, but I don't. But 90-degree pool, and once I get to that temperature and I keep those covers on, with help from the solar panels, I'm hoping that the heat pump only has to run a few hours a day just to nudge up the temperature to keep it going. And the beautiful thing, my wife wants to do her pool exercises first thing in the morning as part of her wake-up routine. Well, before, that's the coldest time of the day. But because the heat pump is running all day long, I could set the rooftop to go to 91 or 90 or 92. And so the pool will be its hottest and maybe too hot at 5 or 6 in the afternoon. It'll start to cool off, but then I have the heat pump set for 88 or 89, whatever temperature we decide on. And that'll start running once the water cools down, and it'll keep running overnight. So when my wife goes to get in the pool, it's whatever temperature we set the heat pump for. When the sun comes out and then the rooftop panels kick on again, the heat pump will stop. So I don't use electricity when I don't need to. I fall back onto the roof-based system. So that's some adventures about pools. If I got anything terribly wrong, let me know with a gentle and polite email. But, just some extra fun of my adventures in Florida.
He loves you and he needs money. He always needs money. He's all powerful, all perfect, all knowing, and all wise. Somehow, just can't handle money. Religion takes in billions of dollars. They pay no taxes, and they always need a little more. Now, you talk about a good bullshit story. Holy shit.
This segment is the year 2023 in review. I'm going to talk about performance numbers, pros and cons of different performance investments, different index funds, how you might have done, how you could have done, and maybe if you don't use index funds, if you don't have your accounts at Vanguard or Schwab, if you use somebody else, maybe it can give you something to talk about, something to contemplate, something to consider, and maybe a way for you to notice you have a serious fucking problem. So these are general, a lot of the caveats that are always at play. I'm reporting these numbers on my show, and I have the temptation to make myself look better than reality. So don't trust what I'm saying. Go check it. But I mean, it's a reference. It's a starting point. It's an idea for you to think about. I might accidentally, intentionally even, change the mix of the ratios that I'm reporting or talking about in a way that would affect what you might have made. Also, nobody, including me, had this exact mix of things. No matter what the mix I tell you, nobody had it. And even when I send people spreadsheets that show what a portfolio like theirs might have made in the past, I have on the spreadsheet that, keep in mind, you didn't own all of these funds in these exact dollar amounts for the entirety of the period of time. And it also assumes automatic reinvestments. Instead of rebalancing like I do, it doesn't include anything where I might have moved in or out or changed adjustments. So don't get too nutty. This is not, written in stone. These are just some numbers I'm throwing out to give you a reference point. So let me start with said reference points. The first thing that most people like or hear about on the news is the S&P 500. Mentioned this recently. It's that time of year where I'm going to mention it several times, and then I'll probably stop mentioning it because it's not that important. What are you going to do with that number? It's just nice to know. The S&P 500, based on what I've last checked for calendar year 2023, and all of this is calendar year, not 1 year from the date of me recording, but calendar year 2023 with dividends, the S&P 500 is up 26.24%. So if the only thing you had was the S&P 500, congratulations. You did fantastic. You did absolutely fantastic. I don't use just the S&P 500. So a more appropriate measure might be the total stock market index, which is 26.01%. So 26%. Still amazing and not a big difference for the total market compared to the S&P 500, which is kind of to be expected because something like 75%, give or take, of the total stock market is the S&P 500. So they're not going to be that different. I'm going to do more of a high level before I circle back and go in the detail here. For the last 1 year, REITs, at least the Vanguard REIT fund that I use, about 12% for calendar year 2023. International, collectively, as measured by the total international index fund, 15.48, 15.5. So, that's dramatically less than the S&P 500 or the total U.S. stock market. And theoretically, someday international could do better than domestic. It's not done so very often in the last 10 years, that's for sure. bonds collectively, the total bond index fund, again from Vanguard, says it's up 5.7% for the last calendar year. Wow, that's truly amazing. 5.7% in bonds. And that is in part because the interest rates are dramatically higher, but it's also because there's now, at the very end of 23, some thought and concern that rates might go down a little bit. And if interest rates go down, the general effect on bonds is that their value goes up. So the bonds you already own become more valuable. And depending on the mix, because I was still quite conservative, did add some intermediate late in 2023 for some people that are probably in or close to retirement that have larger portfolios, but they were 5% each for a total of 10%. 10% of the bond portion. So if bonds are 30%, these are 3% of your portfolio. Not a big deal, but worked out pretty good. At first, I thought it was working out poorly, but then the market changed and things happened. So on general, if you had all stocks all across the U.S. in a blend similar to what my ideas are, not necessarily the best thing for you, none of this is personalized investment advice. We're just talking about some fun numbers that we can poke at. If you had a mix like I have, where it's half large cap and half not large cap, you probably didn't even make the 26% that I talked about with the total market. You probably made something around 22 to 24. And that's because the vast majority of the really spectacular performance came from large cap growth. The large cap growth fund from Vanguard, VIGAX, up 46.77%. We talked about this almost a year ago because the large cap growth fund was down something like 35% in calendar year 2022. And I don't know exactly what I said, but I said something along the lines of, if a fund goes down 33% and then at some period in time in the future returns to where it was, the going forward gains would be 50%. So if you have $100,000 in the Vanguard Large Cap Growth Index and it went down to $66,000 because you lost a third, when it goes from 66 to 100, it doesn't add 33% back. It adds 50% back. It's a math trick. It's a really cool fucking math trick. And for anyone that switched their allocations from overweighting in value, because we were 60-40 in value, into 50-50 somewhere about a year ago, we did really well. I'm just beside myself giddy with that. So that's kind of nice. But overall for this year, while better than leaving it in value funds, it would have been nice if I overweighted in growth. I didn't decide to do that. I didn't make that call to go that extreme. I like the small adjustments. And the large cap growth is a fund because it made 46, almost 47%. That might be a place for you to look at to rebalance out of, depending on your situation. Large cap value, 9.24. And kind of similar effects. Mid cap growth is 23, value is 10, and in small cap growth is 21.5 and value is 16. So a lot of good numbers there. And like I said, the international 14, 15, 16, emerging markets only 9. What is this one here? 19.98% for Europe and 15.5 for Pacific. So if you have just the US, if it's just large cap growth, it's 47. If it's the S&P 500, it's 26. If you have a blend like what I've talked about over the last several years, it might be 22 to 24, a little lower. If you also have international, if about a third of your money is international, and if international is making 15, 16%, that's going to pull down that number a little bit more. So your total stock performance is going to be 18 to 21, give or take, if it's stocks only. Now, if you have a generous allocation of bonds, that bond performance might have been around 6 to 6.5%. So if half of your money was in bonds and you made 6.5 and half of it was in stock, let's just say you made 20, the average on that is going to be around 13%. So like I've talked about with previous segments on the duh concept, stocks make more than bonds in the long run. Bonds are a drag to your performance. They always are. And that's why philosophically for me, in retirement, I want to figure out your cushion needs to be as big as necessary, but I want it to be as small as possible. So we want that comfort of the volatility reduction and a place for you to go to take out money in case the stock market takes a shit for half a decade or longer. But we don't want too much money there because it's always a drag on your performance. Well, in 2022, it wasn't because the bond market was down. The total bond fund was probably down 12, 13%. We got really lucky. We're down 5 or 6%. When the stock market's down 25, bonds look great. But over many years, bonds are a drag. So you don't want too much of them in general. So that's just some thoughts on what you might have returned. So if you have an all stock portfolio, even if it's, company like Morgan Stanley doing stock picking for you, you'd be curious, check at the beginning of the year and at the end of the year, and maybe they even have it on the statement. What kind of return did you make? If you made 8%, 12%, you have a problem. How is that possible when the market's up 26, where a nice mix of domestic and international and small cap and everything could be 18 to 21? How did you end up with 12? What's going on in there? You need to figure that out. If you have half bonds and half stocks, instead of making 13 or 14%, you made 5. Again, you have a serious problem. And I have had conversations with people where they got whacked in risky bonds and or long-term bonds. As an example, going back to Vanguard's long-term bond index fund, the 3-year performance of that is minus 11.5% per year. That's the annualized number. It's not 11% loss. It's 11% loss stacked year after year after year. So something like 35 to 40% loss as of the end of the year for 2023. So we avoided those on purpose because I was concerned that could happen. The result was we had slightly lower bond performance than we could have had until things changed, and then we avoided big losses. That is exciting to me. So someone recently asked me, well, how much do you add to the portfolio? 1%, 3%, 5% per year? And I was like, I don't know. I'm hoping that the combination of reasonably good returns and reasonable reduction in volatility it's big enough that it covers the expense that you pay to me to manage the account. That's the goal. If you don't see it that way, then you don't hire me. That's just kind of how that works. So there's some ideas of how performance may have been, some benchmarks for you to compare to, and hopefully it works out or worked out for you. If you have questions or concerns, or you want me to look at a statement from where you are currently investing money, we can do that. Send me an email, phil@polarisfinancialplanning.com. And keep in mind that first email, do not include anything like your birth date, your social security, and don't send a statement. Make sure that I get the email. Make sure that I respond to it. And then if you still want to send me something, fine. I just want that extra layer of security that you didn't type in the email address wrong and send your statement to some unknown place. So that wraps up 2023 in review. Hopefully that helps you understand your performance for last year.
You're listening to The Phil Ferguson Show.
Hey, poor! You don't have to be poor anymore! Jesus is here!
The Phil Ferguson Show is for educational and entertainment purposes only. Nothing said on the show should be interpreted as personalized investment advice. Investments should be based on your personal situation, and you, of course, should consult with your financial advisor or tax professional before taking any actions. This is a quick segment on a new thing, well, at least new to me, Roth conversion ladder. It doesn't really do anything new per se, but the several steps combined together create a new way where you could possibly take money out of your accounts, your qualified accounts, before the age of 59 and a half. So let me back up a step. A traditional investment account, a brokerage account, a taxable account, individual joint tenants account, all those are non-qualified accounts, just they're classic accounts. The newer types of accounts from the 70s, IRAs, Roth IRAs, SEPP IRAs, and many more, those are qualified, which mean they are qualified for special tax treatment. The downside for some fortunate people is that if you've done really well and made good money and saved a lot and invested wisely and kept your expenses low, and you piled large amounts of money into qualified accounts, you may not be able to get the money out if you have the financial means to retire before the age of 59 and a half. Well, at least not without paying penalties. So you can take money out before you're 59 and a half, but you're going to have to pay penalties on it. I've been using or recommending for a select handful of people over the years a program called SEPP. SEP is a self-employed 401k. That's a SEP or SEP IRA. This is SEPP, substantially equivalent periodic payments. I think it's also called the 72T rule. And if it's in an annuity, I think it's the 72Q rule, because this shit's fucking complicated. But anyway, so if you have big piles of money in your IRA, millions of dollars, and you're ready to retire, but you're 54, and you go, oh, shucky darns, I have enough money to retire, but I really don't want to pay the 10% penalty for taking money out early. Well, what you could do is use the SEPP rules and take out a reasonable amount of money each year without paying the 10% penalty. There's different ways to calculate how much you can take out, and it gets complicated. And every case I've ever consulted somebody or recommended to somebody that they do this, it always comes with the requirement, from my perspective, that you have a tax professional that can help you with this to make sure you don't fuck it up. Because if you get hit with a penalty, you're paying it, not me. So you need to make sure that your tax professional knows how to do it and what they're doing. And you'll need to keep notes to make sure that if they retire or they get confused next year, because I had one client one time called me up in a panic saying, my tax guy just did my taxes and I have to pay this 10% penalty on the money we were going to take out last year. And you said we could do that without paying a penalty. And I said, well, we went back and forth, and I have email exchanges from your tax person that said they understood this. Send them these emails, tell them this, tell them use these words. And they called back to their tax professional and they said, oh yeah, I forgot that that's what we were doing in your specific case. So keep records, stay on top of it. It's a tricky, complicated thing. Another thing that one could do is a Roth conversion ladder. So at any point, if you have money in a traditional IRA, a contributory IRA, just a regular old deductible IRA, you can convert some, you could convert all, but that's probably going to be a really big tax bill that you don't want to pay. You can convert some of your money in your traditional IRA to your Roth IRA every year. The one downside about this is that if you do this while you're still working, your income is probably reasonably good, and anything that you take out of the IRA and convert to a Roth IRA will be counted as income in that year, and you're going to have to pay tax on all of it. You do get to avoid, there's no 10% penalty. You're just converting from a traditional IRA to a Roth IRA. The next thing that's a trick is then you have to wait 5 years. The money has to be in the Roth IRA account for 5 years, and then you can pull out the principal, the money that you moved over from the IRA, the money you converted from the IRA, 5 years later, you can take that out without paying any taxes, without paying any penalty, but only that amount. And you'll have to very carefully track and document and make sure that you're only pulling out the principal that you had put in 5 years earlier. Like I said, the biggest possible downside on this is that when you do that conversion, you're still working because you want to retire in 5 or more years. So you would do that every year, but you're converting money from a traditional account to a Roth IRA account, presumably at your peak earning years and reasonably high tax rates. But it's something that can be done. One way might be better for you, way may be worse for you, but you have at least these two options of how you can take money out of an IRA and or a Roth IRA without a 10% penalty before the age of 59 and a half. The nice thing is at 59 and a half, in the year in which you turn 59 and a half, if I understand the nuance of the rules, you can start taking out money from an IRA without penalty, or from a Roth, you can take out the principal and the gains without paying any taxes because you already paid the taxes. Which is better for you? Hard to know. If it's you're just putting money into something today, fresh, I think using the Roth versus the traditional IRA is kind of straightforward, no-brainer. If you've already got a whole bunch of money in IRAs, traditional IRAs, deductible IRAs, and you want to convert some every year into Roth, maybe. It might be a big tax bill. It might be that if you just waited a few more years and took it out of your IRA, you would be paying a lower tax rate because your income might be lower in retirement. If you're in a position that you're so fortunate that in retirement you're going to have more income and be in higher tax tiers because you've saved and made a lot of money or inherited money or however that worked out for you, good for you. You might want to do those conversions a little more quickly before retirement than in retirement when you might be paying a lower tax rate. So it all depends. Of course, tax rates could change. The rules could change. The Congress could say at some point in the future, you're going to have to pay 10 or 15% tax on the gains in the Roth, even though when you opened up the account, you were told it would be 0%, because the Congress can change the rules at any time they want, just like original Social Security was not taxed, and now a certain portion of it is, and that's a whole nother segment. But those are some ways that if you have the vast majority of all of your money in IRAs, 401ks, you can possibly take out SEPP, substantially equivalent periodic payments, or if you plan in advance, do Roth laddering, where you can take out money before the age of 59 and a half and not pay the 10% penalty. Do you know what time it is? I do. It's pool o'clock. I'm going to wrap this show up. Hopefully you learned something, you enjoyed something. If you have show ideas or topics, questions you want answered, you may send me an email, phil@polarisfinancialplanning.com. But for me, I'm going to give you some nice outro music. And I don't mention it all the time, but I'm going to put it at the end of this episode, is a song called Not Dead Yet, written by Ralph Covert and the Bad Examples, used with permission by Ralph Covert himself. He's been on the show a couple times in the years, talking about his rock and roll lifestyle and all the fun that he's had, and great stories, and a great storyteller, not only in interviews, but in the songs, which is why I adore his music. And thank you to my wife for introducing me to him and the band and his music, because she was a fan years before I knew they existed. But Ralph Covert, the Bad Examples, the song is Not Dead Yet. And I don't think it was this song. Oh my God, I'm going to have to check. But Styx did a cover version of one of the songs that Ralph wrote. It was on an album 10, 12 years ago. But that will be the outro music. And I am going to go take off both pool covers and hop in the pool that is probably give or take around 89 to 90 degrees in, well, today not sunny, but most days is sunny California. I don't even know where I live. Sunny Florida. I guess California's got in my head for some reason. But sunny Florida, it's going to be a low of 37 here in a couple days, but a low of minus 32 in Chicago with the wind chill. One of the reasons, because people ask, why? Oh, why did you move to Florida? Well, the weather is one of them. Lower taxes is another one. And both on my side and my wife's side of the family, we have relatives down here already. So anyway, that wasn't something I was going to cover. I'm going to wrap up, go to the pool, and I'll talk to you later. Ciao.
Well, I was born too late to play in the Rolling Stones. I don't know Jimmy Page, I never met Yoko Ono. Standing with a Strat, I'm rock and roll's bastard son. Go out, get drunk, get laid, have fun. Don't got $1 million, don't drive a Cadillac. Give me half a chance, cause I'm not dead yet. Not dead yet. Not dead yet. I'm a mad dog fighting with the wall against my back. You better get a bigger gun, I'm not dead yet. I've been machine gun, handgun, hijack, left for dead. Dive bomb, napalm, nuclear warheaded. Dropped from a jet plane with no parachute. Shot by a firing squad and raped by a business suit. Dancing on a landmine, one leg left. I can still crawl and I'm not dead yet. Not dead yet. Not dead yet. I'm a mad dog fighting with the wall against my back. You better get a bigger gun, I'm not dead yet. Well, you're bigger, rougher, meaner, tougher, dirtier and uglier and sneakier and trickier. You wanna shoot me with a gun, cut me with a knife. Take your bare hands and rip out my eyes. Kick me in the balls and you bit me in the neck. Well, hit me again, cause I'm not dead yet. Not dead yet. Not dead yet. I'm a mad dog fighting with the wall against my back. You better get a bigger gun, I'm not dead yet. Well, there's a mugger in the alley, there's a sniper in the hall. There's a girl at the bar, wants to get